Conflict. As the world teetered on the brink of anarchy, a new hope arose. An elite international task force charged with ending the war and restoring liberty to all nations. Overwatch. Soldiers, scientists, adventurers, oddities. Guardians who secured global peace for a generation. Under its steadfast protection, the world recovered.
One of the biggest lines, if not the biggest line at all of PAX East is the one to play Overwatch here in the Blizzard booth. And first of all, I gotta just what's it feel like to sort of get to show this game to the public? I know you had it at BlizzCon, but you know, people getting here and getting to play it. What's the feeling? What's the buzz?
It's absolutely exhilarating for us. So BlizzCon was fantastic, and there was a lot of discussion in the community about the game, and a lot of players were wondering, well, when can we get our hands on it? And we really want to check it out. So bringing it to the East Coast, where there's a whole different group of players, being at PAX East, where there's such a passion for video games, has been amazing. It's so great for us to get to see people play the game.
I can get the feeling that for Blizzard as a company to finally sort of get to move into new territory, new IP, new franchise, to sort of, you know, it's got to feel kind of good after all these years. I mean, obviously we all love StarCraft, Diablo, Warcraft, but still it's got to feel good to sort of work on something else.
It feels fantastic. You said it, we love our previous franchises. I worked on World of Warcraft for 6.5 years and loved it. It was the hardest decision ever to leave World of Warcraft. But the time is just right for something very new for us. It's a new genre with the FPS. And just tackling this bright, beautiful, new future Earth that we want to introduce people to in Overwatch has been really a lot of fun for us.
So let's talk about those two layers. First of all, sort of the world that you're into. What kind of place is this world?
Well, the world is very hopeful, and that's what we want to get through to people at the forefront. So there's a lot of different visions out there for what it might be like in the future. And in video games, those tend to turn very dark pretty quickly. You know, post-apocalyptic, gritty, you know, what would New York look like if it was underwater type of visions. And they're fun to think about, but we wanted to really challenge ourselves. The catchphrase that we use to talk about the world we're building is it a future worth fighting for? So, you know, what's the point of fighting this battle if everything's just wrecked in the first place? And we wanted to create a universe that was just inviting to players, that they wanted to spend a lot of time in and learn more about.
And I guess that's where the sort of the characters fit in as well. Very diverse cast, and for a shooter, it's unusual that the classes are so different within each class, and et cetera, et cetera. Can you tell us a little bit about the philosophy that gone into designing that?
Yeah, the game is all about the heroes. They are the center of what Overwatch is about. We're also trying to draw out of our players their inner hero and get them to feel that way. We felt like variety was a huge part of that. Variety, diversity, not only in gameplay, but also in who do you want to be? Do you want to be, you know, the giant ape? Do you want to be the heroic, strong woman? Do you want to be the cybernetic monk from the future? We want to give you a lot of these types of options, but really over-the-top heroic gameplay is what we're trying to do first and foremost with Overwatch.
It's got that nice thing as well that sort of you quickly adapt by switching your roles, you're switching your characters, and sort of the team always changes during the match. Is that something that you're also going for, that sort of fluidity in sort of adapting to the situation?
Absolutely. Part of the fun of a game like this is reacting to what the enemy is doing. And if we locked you into a hero, and if you had chosen the wrong hero at the get-go, you'd kind of be locked into a negative experience throughout the match. It also gives higher skilled players another way to show their sort of knowledge of the game. So I always use the example, you know, if the enemy team has a bunch of Symmetras and they've set up turrets all over the place and have a bunch of teleporters. Well, maybe somebody on your team should switch to Winston and jump in there and quickly sweep the turret nests and take out the teleporters. So there's a lot of knowledge of the game and counterplay that comes into the hero swapping idea.
And very sort of, I don't know what to say, but it's very dynamic all the time. It's like you don't know what to expect next. Here at PAX East, you're showing off 2 new characters, as far as I understand it, McCree and Saraya. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah, for sure. First, there's McCree, who's sort of our gunslinger outlaw. He has a cool story where he was originally a bad guy. He was robbing trains, stealing ammunition, shuttling guns around the country. He gets busted by Overwatch and now fights for the forces of good. He's a really fun character to play. He's kind of like a mid-range to long-range sniper, but also very effective at short range with his, fanning the hammer on his revolver. He's got a really devastating ultimate ability called Deadeye, where he takes sort of count of everybody on the battlefield, holsters his gun, waits till he sees everybody, whips it out, and shoots them all. Sort of the opposite end of that spectrum is Zarya. She's our first female tank, so we're really excited about that. So far we have a male, a gorilla, and a female, so we feel like we have a good representation there. And Zarya, she plays really differently. I think she's a higher skill tank to play than Winston or Reinhardt. She has a really interesting resource mechanic where she can put a barrier either on herself or on an ally to protect them. As that barrier takes damage, it charges up her main weapon and her primary attack, so she does more damage. So you'll see these really skilled players kind of snowball when they play Zarya in a good way. And last but not least is her ultimate ability, which is the Graviton Surge. She can place it anywhere, stick it to the ceiling, stick it to the wall, you name it, and it takes the whole enemy team and attracts them towards it. It combos great with, if a teammate of yours is playing Tracer and throws her time bomb in there, wipes them all out. So those are our 2 new heroes.
Fascinating that with the armor thing, because it sort of suggests that if you see the weakest player on your team and you give him armor, then that will sort of power her and make her strong. So it's kind of like it's almost like a trap for the other team, if you will.
Exactly, like really skilled Zarya players. I was playing her wrong at first. When we first got her in the game, I would put the shield on somebody before they entered combat, hoping they would go into combat and take damage. Watching the really skilled Zarya players, what they do is wait till somebody's already engaged in combat and throw it up almost as a trick on the enemies because they can't stop firing quick enough before Zarya's charged herself up. So there's a lot of skill to the ability.
Oh yeah, and that's interesting. Yeah, very interesting. And I guess you got all these sort of, with all these many characters, you see a lot of different kind of synergies as well on the battlefield. How do you go about sort of designing and balancing that sort of? It must be a hard job.
It's the funnest job in the world, and we have a great design team that all collaborates on this, as well as the whole development team kind of contributes ideas to how to come up with these fun combos. One of the things that we try to do is make sure that not everybody's ultimate ability just kills everybody on the map. I think that's an instinct when you're designing ultimate abilities. The name alone tells you wow, it should do a lot of damage, but sometimes you can come up with stuff that combos in ways that you might not have thought of if you were just thinking in terms of damage. Widowmaker is a great example. Her ultimate ability grants vision for her entire team to see enemies through walls. Obviously, it's super powerful for her as a sniper, but it helps everybody out. Having that awareness of where the enemy is a huge way to create some awesome combinations.
So I was playing this sort of capture point kind of mode, but you also got the payload mode, as I believe it's called. What kind of modes are you looking at? Is that sort of the scope of it, or are you looking to expand beyond those?
Right now, we have 3 modes in the game. We have a capture point mode, and we have 2 maps that do that, Hanamura and Temple of Anubis. We've got a hybrid map, which is King's Row, which is 1 point of capture point, and then the rest of the map is a payload. And then we introduced at PAX East yesterday, Watchpoint Gibraltar, which is purely a payload map. They all play very differently. They all have their advantages and disadvantages. We've experimented with other game modes as well internally. We've prototyped a lot of different maps. And what we keep coming back to is Overwatch is a game about heroes first and foremost. And we never want to lose that focus on the heroes exclusively. So we want to be very careful that the game mode itself doesn't take over and dominate the player's thoughts. Some of the prototypes we were doing, players would get very distracted. What am I supposed to do? What's the gimmick of this map? Oh, I don't understand. You know, there was all these kind of problems that were happening. We realized it's best for Overwatch when the heroes rise to the top and the game mode kind of fades into the background.
Interesting approach. And I suppose it's also like these days, I mean, I assume that Overwatch is going to be one of these games that you launch it and slowly, and then you're going to build it over years and support it. And so you don't really have to get sort of spreading yourself out right at the start. You can sort of naturally let it come to you what kind of things you want to change in the future.
That's absolutely correct. In fact, we're dedicated to supporting all our games at Blizzard at this point as a live service. We think there's no such thing as just, you know, releasing a game and not thinking about it anymore. And with Overwatch, that's our exact philosophy. Right now, the focus is entirely on make a great, competitive yet approachable 6v6 team experience in multiplayer. And whatever might come after that, we're looking a lot to the community, to fan reception, about what they want to see in the game, you know, after we get it out there and it's really solid.
And, you know, just having played it a little bit, I gotta say, like, there's a lot of games that release that aren't as sort of as polished and looking and playing as well as this one. But I suppose you still have some ways to go before you're sort of ready to let a lot of people in.
Absolutely. The game, we feel like it feels really fun right now. It was great at BlizzCon. We did a lot of change and iteration before bringing it here to PAX East, and people seem to be having a lot of fun with it right now. We announced that we're going to be opening the beta in the fall of 2015, which is coming right up on us in a few months. But we want to make absolutely sure. We feel like as Blizzard, as a company, we have a commitment to quality, and we have a promise that we've made to our players that a game experience is going to be really solid before we release it. So as much as we know there's a lot of anticipation for Overwatch and we want to get in everybody's hands as quickly as possible, we also want to make sure that we do a good job and get it right.
One thing that sort of I'm thinking about is, like, where did the idea at Blizzard come to let's make a shooter? Because it's like, it's not something that you know from the outside I would think, that might be the next thing for Blizzard.
I think it's really funny that you bring that up. First of all, there's a ton of passion around shooters at Blizzard. Myself, I've always been a fan of the shooter genre. I played it from the very beginning with Castle Wolfenstein. You get into the Dooms and the Quakes and Duke Nukems, really the first whole group of shooters. So there's a lot of passion at the studio for shooters as a genre. Also, something to think about Blizzard is that with every one of our games, people haven't expected us to make that game. And a lot of people have forgotten with World of Warcraft, back when we first announced World of Warcraft and we're working on it, people said, what are you doing? Blizzard's the RTS company. You don't make MMOs. You guys don't know what you're doing. And I'd like to think that we proved that we were capable of making a decent MMO with World of Warcraft. I think most recently, you can see Heroes of the Storm is this great hero brawler. You've got Hearthstone, which is a fantastic CCG. So I think we're trying to prove that, when we have passion and desire to tackle a genre, we're going to put everything we have into it and to make it as competitive and as approachable as possible.
How would you say that sort of the Blizzard ethos, if you will, how does it apply to a game like this?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that we look at and we try to learn from our previous games. We have a set of design values that all the designers at Blizzard talk about and really hold close to their heart. There's a couple that I think really speak to Overwatch. One is this idea of what is the fantasy. So, you see that tremendous gorilla over there, or you see the cybernetic monk, like what is the fantasy of playing that character? So we try to deliver on that. There's other things other values, such as one of the ones that we have is called make everything overpowered. And I think you see this in games like Heroes of the Storm and Hearthstone. You look at some of the cards in Hearthstone, like, you know, the first time you look at Kel'Thuzad and go, how is this card balanced? How is it not just going to be the most powerful card in the history of card games? And, you know, as Hearthstone players know, there's lots of counters to it and whatnot. So we're trying to take all of the design knowledge that we've gathered over the years from working on our previous games and bring the Blizzard version of that to the shooter genre.
Speaking of the fantasy, the lore, the world, can you tell us a little bit about how you will convey this narrative and the world to the players and to the fans?
Absolutely. We want to tell the story of the universe of Overwatch in a number of ways. First and foremost is what we can do in the game through what the heroes vocalize as the players are playing them. They'll say certain things. We think they have a lot of rich things to say. We also want to do a lot of contextual visual storytelling in the levels. So you might be in the Gibraltar map in Winston's laboratory, looking around, reading things on monitors, looking at his whiteboards, reading his notes, understanding what's going on. But we also want to tell a story outside of the game as well. We think that the trailer that we showed at BlizzCon that featured the two kids in the museum was received very well, and it sort of whet everybody's appetite for, you know, what other cinematic storytelling could take place in this universe. So we hope to deliver on that in the future. We also hope to look to other forms of media sources that we could do a good job with storytelling. You know, perhaps that manifests itself in the way of graphic novels, comic books, short stories. We think there's a lot of potential to tell a lot of Overwatch stories in many different ways.
One thing that I'm a little bit curious about, because I've been hearing sort of two sides. I've been hearing that, oh, Overwatch is not at all related to Titan, and I've been hearing that, well, it sort of shares a universe or something like that. Can you just clear that up, like exactly what it's all about?
Absolutely. So there's definitely a lot of Titan influence in Overwatch. We spent a lot of years working on Titan, and we thought a lot about that universe as we were working on it. So there are game mechanics, there are technology concepts, there are art concepts that we wanted to carry over from Titan. But at its core, Overwatch is a brand new game. When we started the project, we completely reset. We completely redid the art style, we completely redid the technology of the game, and the whole concept is completely different. Titan was really going to be this big, giant MMO, and I think as players are realizing, Overwatch is you know, an epic game at heart, but the scope of it is really razor focused. It's a competitive 6v6 shooter, so the game design is very drastically different. We tend to take influence from all of the previous projects we worked on. So, you know, bizarrely, you know, there's definitely Titan influence in Overwatch, but there's also a lot of World of Warcraft, Heroes of the Storm, StarCraft influence. One of the games that we look at the most and talk at the most around Blizzard is Hearthstone, believe it or not. We think there's so much magic to the way that the Hearthstone team approach game development that we're really inspired by what they're doing. So we're hoping to bring all of that past Blizzard game development, release projects and canceled projects to life with Overwatch.
And now we're talking about mechanics and the gameplay, I understand, because I guess you want to keep the universes separate. Like you don't want to sort of have the flavor of one of the other universes in Overwatch too much.
Yeah, I think there are things that we've learned from other universes that you're seeing in Overwatch. The art style is really interesting. It's very bright, it's beautiful, there's a very liberal use of a wide range of colors. I credit a lot of this to our art staff, who's led by Bill Petrus. Well, Bill was the original art director on World of Warcraft. So I think Bill partnered with Chris Metzen, who's our creative director, really have a great vision for world building, and they learned a lot building World of Warcraft together, and I think you're seeing that influence in Overwatch. Now, while Overwatch is in Azeroth and it's, you know, planet Earth in present day, there are similarities. If you look at the buildings, there's not a lot of straight lines going on. I don't think any civil engineer would pass, you know, code for any of the buildings in any Blizzard game, but there's definitely that Blizzard aesthetic that's going on.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. We really appreciate you being here.